The Bengals 2025 draft is officially in the books. We're going to give you guys the Cincinnati scope of what we think of this draft coming up next on the Cincinnati podcast.
It's an exciting time to be a Bengals fan.
Welcome to the Cincinnati podcast. I'm Ace, he's Zim. The Bengals 2025 draft is in the books, but before we get into that, I'm gonna toss it to my partner, Zim. How you doing today, bro?
Hello world. We got a whole lot of hello worlds in the crowd today. I need to start getting back on my hello world. But I get into the hello world when I feel like the Bengals are really cooking, and it's almost like, yeah, look at me now. I'm not ready for hello world right now, but I will say hello to you, Ace, and hello to all the Cincinnati folks that are checking us out right now. Hope you had a great weekend. Here we go. Monday, let's get it.
Let's get it, and let's get right into it, man. As you guys know, the show is sponsored by Midwest Best Barbecue, so shout out to them. If you guys are watching right now on the YouTube, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, share it with a friend. We appreciate that. That helps grow the channel. But getting into this thing off the rip, you guys saw we kind of did the Cincinnati roundtable live draft reaction. If you want to go back and check that out, you can. This is me and Zim's reaction, kind of to recapping what happened Thursday through Saturday. So, first round, Shamar Stewart, the Bengals go edge rusher here. Walter Nolan goes right before, which breaks my heart. But we had heard whispers, honestly, all day about Shamar Stewart kind of being the pick. A lot of people mocked him there. A lot of people said, get prepared for that to be the case. I know that he was actually, if I'm not mistaken, the second highest prime scored edge rusher for the first round of the first round picks, right after Abdul Carter, who the Bengals had no chance of getting. This is a guy that's extremely athletic. RAS score, I'm surprised, is basically is a 9.99. Scored well. The only thing with this pick is everybody is talking about the 39 pressures versus the 1 sack, the 1.5 sack, right? So that's the kind of aspect of this pick. Before I get into my thoughts, Zim, I'm going to toss it to you. What were your thoughts on the Shamar pick? Because some of these people, if you guys were watching, you guys saw my reaction when it happened live. You were more level-headed on the reaction. So let's hear your reaction to the pick based off of the last couple of days. Now that it's been able to marinate now.
It wasn't even really that I guess my reaction was level-headed, right? But in my brain, I was thinking like, bro, why? Like, you know what I mean? Like, and it wasn't that we didn't look at him before. Like, if anybody knows, we've been in playback, we've been all these different things where we actually have talked about him a little bit, right? And so it wasn't. I think what it was initially, and you tell me, is this the same for you? It's like you didn't want a scenario where the Bengals were drafting potential. And to me, the conversations of a Mike Green, Jahar Campbell, Walter Nolan, all these guys like that, even Malachi Starks, you could throw in that conversation. I think the conversation was about, can you get, instant, gratification or instant results from the pick? And initially, I didn't feel like that way. But then, because one thing we did know is that out of all qualifying defensive edges, shout out to Kent Lee, Math Bomb, everybody knows RES scores or whatever. He scored a 10 out of 10, like the highest ever. He's ranked the number one defensive end out of 2012 defensive ends from 1987 to now. So that in itself, like his athleticism, you'll see the graphic next to Myles Garrett. I hate when people show that graphic because it's like, just pump the brakes on that like it's Myles Garrett. But athletic traits and athleticism put on display, all these different things, you gotta like that portion of it. And think about it. This is what we've been talking about for years is like, I wish the Bengals would draft guys with more athleticism, more RAS, like the higher RAS scores and stuff. I think this year they fell in 17th. Someone could correct me if I'm wrong. They finished 17th as far as overall RAS. I think the previous year they actually had higher ones than that. But I know that Shamar Stewart has pushed that number up a lot. But that was the initial thing, is the lack of production. But then when you start to go watch him play, I feel like he was playing out of place. I thought they had him in 4-eye stuff a lot. They had him in a lot of different things that I don't think in the Texas A&M system gave him a real chance to go and get sacks. The one thing that they did do is put him in a spot so that he could be disruptive. And you'll see different cut-ups of him almost taking a handout in the backfield. Dude's 275 pounds. Like, it's insane. On top of that, he led the team in pressures, which he let everybody know on draft night. Like, hey, look, I led my team in pressures, so he thought sacks was overblown. I do believe, and this is not a homer take. You hear Luke Kuechly today give his assessment of it. He believes that Shamar Stewart could be the best overall defensive end in this draft. And to me, it kind of reminds me of the Luka conversation that I'm having about Anthony Edwards. It's like, do you want the points or do you want the better what I deem to be a better all-around player? I think Anthony Edwards is a far better all-around player because he plays defense. Other elements or other components of defensive end there are other things besides just sacks. And I think Shamar Stewart answers a lot of that. And I think Shamar Stewart is a prototypical defensive edge profile and athleticism. What they build out of that ball of clay, that's for the boys, that's for Montgomery and them boys to figure out.
Yeah, I think for me, the first thing about the Shamar Stewart pick was I was uncomfortable about the situation of him being drafted into, because it had a lot of parallels with Myles Murphy. You're talking about a guy that has extreme athleticism, that has all the talent in the world, but the production wasn't really there. There could be some development in terms of adding to his pass rush arsenal. And for me, it was a situation where this hasn't been a place where they're able to have an assembly line to elevate the talent that needs to be developed into an elite talent. And for me, it was a reminder of the Myles Murphy situation from where we're at. And I don't think, like, there's a lot of people that hate on Myles Murphy, right? And I don't think that it's honestly earned because of the snap counts that Myles Murphy has received over the years. He hasn't been given really the opportunity to showcase his skill set. He's never had an opportunity where he's received 500, 600, 700 snaps. Some of his contemporaries have gotten 800 snaps in a season. I think of Latu and some of the guys that have gotten that opportunity. And even the likes of Will Anderson, when he received a similar amount of snaps that Myles Murphy did, he had the similar numbers in terms of sacks. So for me, I was frustrated because not of Shamar Stewart, the player himself, but because of the system and the lack of their ability to get this high potential out of here. Now, the Bengals do have a new coaching staff. They do have a new system in place, but I feel like that is a lot. That is asking a lot of Al Golden, who is a first-year coordinator that already has to take one of these bottom half defenses and turn it into something, to take Shamar Stewart and also develop him. We've seen similar things done and trusted to guys like Frank Pollock. It hasn't worked out in the past. Could this be something different with Jerry Montgomery? We're here to see. But as the pick marinated on me, and as I kind of thought about some of the different things that have kind of happened with this draft, and just where certain guys were, you talk about Jalon Walker and some of these guys. Honestly, after you look at Abdul Carter, there really aren't too many perfect draft picks that were really ready to step in and do their thing. I think about Mike Green, but though there wasn't really too many guys with
production. Mike Green had a sexual assault.
Yeah, he had the sexual assault, but there weren't many guys with production in this draft outside of Abdul Carter, Mike Green. Like, you're really, like, Mykel Williams is very similar to Shamar Stewart. It's a very similar situation where these guys have traits, but the production really wasn't there, and you don't know what they're going to be at the next level from that perspective. They just played at a top program in the SEC. And so when it really comes down to it, like you kind of listed and like Luke Kuechly pointed out, hey, this guy has the highest ceiling. He may not be there in terms of the production from a sack standpoint. He's kind of there from a pressure standpoint. And if you can put him in the right situation and if you use him correctly, that can make you a better team. But the thing that really made me feel better about the Shamar pick, and we'll get into it, is the lack of a 3-tech taken in this draft, which makes me think not only is he going to play on the edge, they also can utilize him as a 3-tech, which I think gives them the best value and ability to maximize this pick. We also play in a division with Lamar Jackson. You guys kind of calm me down on that as well. So this is a situation where you're going to have a Miles Murphy out there. You're going to have a Shamar Stewart, Trey Hendrickson, all of these guys, Joseph Osai, potentially being able to get out in space and bring down a Lamar Jackson. You need the athleticism. You need the ability to stop the run. You need the ability to be able to bring pressure inside, outside. And I think that Shamar Stewart, if the Bengals do this right, he can deliver on that. And honestly, I wasn't fond too much of the rest of the draft. This is the most exciting pick for me because this is a guy that out of all of the picks that we have has Pro Bowl potential, has potential, all pro potential if he's able to hit that ceiling. And I think that the floor is actually a lot higher than I actually initially thought that it was because of the disruption that he's going to bring on this defensive line and the energy that he's going to bring to the team. I think it's something that's sorely been missed. And at the end of the day, the Bengals have to take swings at this. And I think you mentioned it earlier. You kind of talked about Amarius Mims being that swing, taking a chance on the athleticism, the size, something that separates him from the pack. I think that's what the Bengals are doing here. So for me, initially, I didn't like the pick, but marinating on it, thinking about it, I'm like, all right, I can see where they're going here, other ways that they can use them. It's up to Al Golden for this pick to really work out. It's up to Jerry Montgomery for this pick to work out. Them relying on that is going to tell us a lot because their scouting department, whether they get this right or not, that's really hedged on this pick. So the Bengals are really hedging a lot on this pick. I don't think that I was okay with the risk that they took, but at the end of the day, if it pays off like it did with Amarius Mims, you're looking like a genius in terms of that.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. What else? I do agree. I just think Mike Green would have been in the Trey Hendrickson mode, right? You know what I mean? And then you talk about the sexual assault charges and the off the field stuff that we just went through with Burton. And to me, it just didn't make sense. I did think that on draft day, I had a weird feeling. I thought that we might draft Malachi Starks, which is crazy because the Ravens got Malachi Starks and Mike Green, which is disgusting. But the reason why is because out of prospects, I was like, well, who's got a clean resume? Who's healthy? Even you talked about Abdul Carter. You know, he had a stress fracture and stuff like that. Even there were questions about Mason Graham where he was talking about dropping out the top 10. So it was like, it wasn't really a perfect prospect. It wasn't, like some years we have like the perfect prospect. And I just feel like it just didn't even exist. I think our fan base is correct to question the Shamar Stewart one because of the production, because we've seen this staff not develop a lot of people. That's a very fair assessment. That doesn't mean that you're a hater, doesn't mean that you're being pessimistic, but we've seen them time and time again, it's particularly in the trenches, not develop guys. So for me, I didn't care where it was. I just wanted to see the best player available. And I think, move sacks aside, for what we're trying to do move the quarterback sacks aside. For what we're trying to do in the defensive front, I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think he'll be very disruptive, and I'm not mad at the pick. Let's go to pick number 2. Let's go to round 2, which I thought was the most interesting pick. Shamar Stewart was surprising, but round 2, that was the most interesting pick. Let's do this super chat really quick. Ro, appreciate you, my guy. As always, making sure that you tune in to Cincinnati. If you can't do a super chat, people, I understand. Make sure that you send this link out to somebody right now. But shout out to Ro. He says his tape is amazing. His get off is elite. His size, his speed. I think the Bengals have got a lot more together. We got dogs now. Slayton, Barrett, Shamar, Knight bring attitude. Knight's tape is low-key better than Jihad. Whoa!
That brings us to the next pick that Zim alluded to. Demetrius Knight out of the SEC, played for South Carolina, played for several schools before that. He played the Mike linebacker spot in the flex nickel scheme. He was a guy that was an 8.52 in terms of the RAS score, so he had some athleticism there. His next gen score, he scored 74 overall, which was good enough for fifth amongst linebackers. 71 in production, that was also good enough for fifth. They scored him as being a eventual plus starter. I think Demetrius Knight, a lot of people were taken back by the pick, not that it was a linebacker, but because of his age. And people have kind of talked about that, and I've kind of thought on this, and the reason why is the Bengals fit, and it goes kind of hand in hand with the Shamar Stewart thing, right? The Bengals do not pay players after 30, right? So people are looking at this pick and saying, okay, are you getting Demetrius Knight just to turn around and after his first contract is done, not extend him? Because the Bengals have a reputation of once a player is 30, they're not really extending him. But on the flip side of that, he is not a 20-year-old. He is not a 21-year-old. He is a guy that kind of already is, in a sense, a veteran. And I think that that's the way that the Bengals are looking at it. They need someone that can come in there with that responsibility in terms of stepping in with Logan Wilson as a starter, that the moment is not too big for them. And this is a guy that spent 6 years in college. He's going to be able to adapt to the NFL. He's going to be able to come in. And like our person pointed out, some people do feel like his tape was better than Jihad Campbell's. That's not the first time I've heard that. I believe Lance Zierlein was the person that said that he had essentially the best tape of any of the linebackers in this class. So if that tape translates to what he can be in the NFL, I think that that's very helpful. You and Jake tried to tell me on the pod, like, hey, the Jermaine Pratt thing is over. It is clear that it is over, especially after this draft with the moves that they were able to make. This is a guy that also compares to Jermaine Pratt, right? And it's funny because I don't know if anybody else mocked it, but on the Cincinnati podcast, when we had our fan mock, that was actually one of the people that was mocked here. I believe, what was the fan's name?
His name is Ken. Shout out to Ken Dipple, I believe.
Ken Dipple. So shout out to Ken Dipple. He actually drafted him on the show. That was actually the first time that I had heard of Demetrius Knight.
He raved about him on that show too. If y'all go back and watch it, he's going in about how good Demetrius Knight is.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, right now, our window is what, 4 to 5 years. How long is it until Demetrius Knight is 30? 4 to 5 years. So I think it adds up for a number of reasons. But Zim, your thoughts, because this was a real big mix on how Bengals fans took this. How did you think the Demetrius Knight thing kind of went from your perspective?
So I also had mentioned Demetrius Knight on one of our shows one time before, right? Mm-hmm. And I was talking about the linebackers that I would like in the sense of we didn't take Jihad. And I was like, the next one was Carson Schlesinger that everyone knew. And then it was Demetrius Knight, but I kept on saying, well, he's older. But, you know, when you break it down and you watch the Rams recently, I've seen this whole breakdown where they took Braden Fisk and all these guys that are like older, 23, 24. They're continuously finding guys that are ready to go, ready to ball out like immediately. And I think for what the Bengals need, generally we draft 1 year ahead, right? And so we give guys some time to like get acclimated to the system, find their way and all these different things. But the problem, or not even the problem, but the difference is in this one is that Demetrius Knight was ready to go, and the Bengals didn't have a contingency plan in place as a starting linebacker for Jermaine Pratt. So here comes Knight. We'll talk about the other picks later on, but the Knight pick is the one that I thought signaled to me that it was a little forced in this regard, that they didn't have somebody ready that they feel comfortable to start at linebacker. And they could say whatever they want, But I thought that it showed that they couldn't take the chance of letting him go to the third round, which I thought that he would be drafted in the third round easily. Like there was never, and not just a mock, just the value versus the players that we were looking at, the value versus the rest of the league, and the way the draft was going. When Carson Schlesinger came off the board, I think the Bengals probably looked at their board and said, yeah, we don't like any of these other linebackers right there, so we got to take them right now. I wish that they could have traded out of it. They couldn't, and I think they still could have got him. I know it's a little risky, but we always say, go get your guy. I think that was a clear go get your guy situation.
Yeah, I agree. I do understand why some people were upset with the pick. I was looking at it and I misspoke. He's actually 24 turning 25, so don't kill me, guys. He was 24 turning 25, not 26. I just was kind of confused, like Zim said. I thought that it was going to be a guard. I think most people thought it was going to be a guard. And I think the fact that another linebacker didn't come off the board for another 20 picks had Bengals fans feeling like it was somewhat of a reach at the moment. So I get it, but you're talking about somebody that was able to quickly ingrain himself in the South Carolina culture and become a productive leader for that defense. That was one of the themes of this is maturity, being defensive leaders, coming out there and doing your certain things. I think he has early down starting potential, and I think that you'll see an immediate impact from Demetrius Knight. So next, the Bengals finally did go guard, and they went with Dylan Fairchild out of Georgia, former teammate of Amarius Mims. This was, I think, a pick where people were like, okay, if we didn't get Ratledge, what is the plan? They went back to Georgia. They went and got Fairchild. This is a guy that's played in Mike Bobo's multiple run scheme, gap scheme. He first initially started his career on the scout team and then was able to become one of the better guards in the SEC. So I think from that perspective, the Bengals are looking at, hey, we have a left guard issue. We have a right guard issue. Let's get somebody that can come in and actually be the guy that is there. Now, there's some people that call him Wyatt Teller. There's some people that say that he's average or has backup potential. I hope that he's somewhere in between there. If he's in between there, the Bengals get a quality starter. I think that this is a guy that you can put in there. He had a 79 overall next gen stat score, which makes him fourth in terms of guards. I know some people had him ranked highly. I think that he is a guy out of all of these guys that you can look at, I think, with Knight as a surefire starter. So you're talking about 2 out of 3 of these guys could be a starter. I think starting doesn't really matter. It really matters what kind of amount of snaps are they getting. And I think that Fairchild is a guy that can definitely step in and be that. Now, there is no way that the Bengals can let someone like Cordell Volson, Cody Ford, Jackson Kirkland, none of those, Lucas Patrick, none of those guys can start. And none of those guys should start over Dylan Fairchild if he is the guy. Now, if Fairchild is not the guy, that is where I get into my argument of the Bengals going guard a little bit earlier just to secure that. But I feel very comfortable with them taking a former Amarius Mims teammate and being able to do something with him. I think he's an ascending prospect. I think he's somebody that should start immediately. And I think with Dylan Fairchild, you have your guard of the future. Zim, what were your thoughts on the Dylan Fairchild pick in the third round?
I thought it was really good too. I did want to say one quick thing that I wanted to talk about with Demetrius Knight real quick. One thing that I do, let me start off with the good real quick. I think that he has a really good knack for shedding blocks. I think he's really tough when he's at the point of contact. He's always sniffing out like the runs. He's always able to diagnose very fast. He plays very fast. The only weaknesses I will say is I think he's going to struggle in like man coverages, and I think he can kind of be exploited in some of those spots. I think his hips don't really move as fast as I want him to go in his back pedal playing defense. Also, I think sometimes he has if I watched this one game, it is really interesting. If y'all get a chance to go watch this, go watch his cut up. I thought he looked really good against Alabama. But he does have about 3 plays or so where he goes in and he's impatient. And it's good to be very decisive, but sometimes you have to have patience to let the plays develop. So that's something I want to see, how does that develop. But out of all the linebackers, I think he might even be more pro ready than Carson Schlesinger. I just think Carson Schlesinger is far better in coverage. I think he's going to be a better all-around linebacker. If you were to ask me that before the draft, I'm not going to lie about it. That's just what I think that Carson Schlesinger is like one of my favorite linebackers outside of Jihad, right? But the Knight pick is very interesting because it's justified because he's going to start, but the next 2 picks make it so that it puts a lot of emphasis on the Knight pick. So you talked about Fairchild. Fairchild, same thing. I feel like there are things in this game that I do like, but the one thing I can say versus him versus Ratledge and anybody else on that line, I think him at pass pro was by far the better of the 3 prospects that I think were like super draftable on that Georgia line. I think also getting Fairchild back with with Mims is also an awesome thing. But I think one of the reasons why I like Jonah Savanaya better than I like Tate Ratledge is because I feel like he would be able to held up what Joe Burrow dropping back 40 times. Even though it's a pro-style offense, when you watch Ratledge, a lot of the stuff that made him like a really good prospect is that he was really good in a lot of the play action stuff, even getting to the second level in the run game, which you do need. But I think as a pass protector, Fairchild's ready to go. I don't think that we're going to have any issues with that. And like you said earlier in the pod, we're going to be very reliant on these coaches to, like Peters, to get these guys ready. This is probably the most reliant I've ever seen a Bengals team on coaches getting these guys ready to go. But Fairchild, to me, was one of the more pass pro ready guys that I looked at. If you guys don't know, we do this thing on Playback where we're actually watching film, watching games and different things like that. So if you go look on Playback TV, you look at Bengals or put the Ringless Bandits in and it'll pop up. We're going to do some more stuff on there later, coming up soon too. So keep an eye on that.
Yep. And if you guys are following along on Twitter, we are actually about to cut the feed to Twitter. So make sure that you come on over to continue watching the show on YouTube. We appreciate you guys for tuning in from Twitter. However, we want to push you guys to the YouTube channel because that helps us the most. It helps get the views and everything like that. So we appreciate you guys for tuning in from Twitter. But if you can, come over to the Cincinnati podcast and please hit that subscribe button. We truly appreciate that. And make sure you hit that like button. That helps other Bengals fans find these videos when we put them out there. So we appreciate you guys so much. And with that being said, we will continue this with the next pick in the 4th round, which was Barrett Carter, linebacker out of Clemson, played in the ACC, had a 72 next gen stats production score that was good enough for linebackers. He was a 3-year starter at Clemson, lined up at the mic, played all over, kind of was that Isaiah Simmons role. He didn't really live up to the Isaiah Simmons level. However, he was a guy that was able to play multiple positions. He could be weaponized to be a run defender, cover a man. I'm going to say his man coverage at the next level is somewhat skeptical. I think from that position, this was shocking for me, not because of Barrett Carter. I did see a lot of people mocking Barrett Carter to the Bengals. I really don't know what to think about the Barrett Carter pick because as I look at this scheme, we play mostly nickel. You talk about that 4-2 front where you're talking about there's only 2 linebackers on the field. So if I have Logan Wilson and I have Demetrius Knight on the field, Barrett Carter for that moment is going to be on the bench doing something there. Then you have Oren Burks from that perspective. And so I'm like, okay, well, maybe it's the ADG world. Maybe he finds a role on special teams. And for me, this is possibly a future Logan Wilson competitor if Logan Wilson doesn't continue to be that guy. We'll have to see what the scheme is actually going to do. Are they switching to a 3-4? I know Max Murphy tried to say he doesn't think so, but that's not to say in the future that they might not do something like that a couple years down the line. So Barrett Carter, I like it, but it just made me kind of wonder, like, where is the Bengals coaching staff and what is their vision for this defense? And I would have thought at this point, not that they should have just taken a 3-tech, but I don't think linebacker was what I was thinking. I was thinking 3-tech safety.
Tell everybody what did you tell me about? What do you feel like we're going to talk about the UDFAs later too? Mm-hmm. But what were you telling me that you thought And I thought it was interesting on Shamar Stewart.
Yeah, I said that earlier. I think that they're going to play him at 3-tech. I think that they're going to do a NASCAR package where you can get Miles Murphy and maybe Shamar Stewart at your D tackles. And I think that you have maybe Joseph Osai or Trey Hendrickson, some kind of combination of that. I know that they did play Osai at 3-tech last year. So I think that that's something that they'll do there. Barrett Carter, I don't know how they would deploy him. He is very scheme versatile. So maybe this is a reach. This is a big reach. Maybe he could play that Viper role sometimes in some sort of package. But I think with Barrett Carter, with him being a rookie, with him possibly needing some refinement, especially in coverage, I don't know if that role is best for him. But in the Al Golden scheme, the Viper actually plays closer to the line of scrimmage where they can be used as a blitzer on some downs. So maybe that's the role for him. I don't dislike the Barrett Carter pick. I just wonder, from with all of these needs that the Bengals had, possibly at safety, possibly at 3-tech, why it wasn't that. But again, I'm not mad at the pick. I just kind of question what is the role for Barrett Carter year one. What about you, Zim?
I think all right, so going back to the Knight pick, I'll also say Barrett Carter is one of my favorite picks because I think the value, to me, free agency, and you'll learn a lot about me as we go, and like, we talked about this in the free agency pod. It's like, I like a good deal. You know what I mean? Like, I might go to Saks Fifth Avenue, but I'm going to go look for that sale rack. You know what I mean? And so that's how I looked at free agency. I look at the draft as like, where can you get the best value? Where can you get the most bang for your buck? And maybe we have time at the end. We'll look at some of the other teams in our division where I thought they got tremendous value. Barrett Carter was the one where I thought it kind of matched up, where the actual value finally lined up for us. Like Fairchild was somewhat there. I thought Ratledge in the second, as we'll talk about later too, I thought it was sitting right there. You have a prime opportunity to get one of the best guards, whatever. You go to Fairchild, it feels a little bit forced because the Bengals all season said that they had to get a guard right there. I'm not mad at the pick, like the pick. Barrett Carter was the first one where I felt like this is one of the last supremely gifted athletic guys that can go sideline to sideline. I first saw Barrett Carter in I think it was the Gator Bowl. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they were going against Kentucky. He had like 4 pass deflections in that game. That was one of the ones that stood out. There was a guy that had that already cut up and everything like that. He also had a couple interceptions. He also had a couple fumble forces. He's a guy that makes plays. And when I think about the last time, and as a community, the Bengals, and I had a tweet similar to this or talking about this earlier, as a community, I think it's whack that Ravens fans don't acknowledge how good Joe Burrow is or what Joe Burrow has accomplished and all these different things. I also think it's equally as whack that as Bengal fans, we don't acknowledge that in our division, Lamar Jackson has killed us. And I think that we also need to acknowledge, like, his record is his record versus the Bengals. I don't think that it really means anything in the overall scheme of things. I think in a playoff scenario, I like Joe Burrow better, right? What happened to us last season? We got swept by this team. What was the one thing that we couldn't do? We couldn't get old boy to the ground when we were up 21-7. You got to acknowledge like that actually happened. The same way that they got to acknowledge that Joe Burrow threw for 900 yards in 2 games. Yes, they won the game, but they'd be lying if they're telling you that their defense is like lit because Joe Burrow had 900 yards, which I thought was insane. I think Barrett Carter is a lot like when we had ADG. Go look at the one time that we did knock off Lamar. It was 41-17. Akeem Davis-Gaither was playing in that same role where he was shadowing and going and running up and down the line of scrimmage, and he gave them problems in that game. That was the first time, too. Remember, we had the revamped linebacker core. That was after we had the spin cycle on us in 2020. We come back 2021. We come back with the linebacker. We're now coming back with new linebackers and everything. ADG, that's arguably a top 3 ADG Bengals game. Barrett Carter, I think, is 230, a little bit undersized. The angles that he takes a little bit is a little crazy, but he's jumping over people, and he will go get a mobile quarterback. So for that alone, he has a role in those games. If you get up against anybody that has mobility, he has a role in those games. I've watched when the Eagles played the Ravens in 2024, some of the issues that we had with Lamar in pursuit, they didn't have those issues. In fact, he got like some garbage stuff at the end of that game. I think he's very important. Barrett Carter is very important for the Lamar puzzle. And I also think it's like also equally as important for us to acknowledge that the Bengals must win the division in order to get to where they want to get to. Literally, if they win those 2 games last year, the Bengals are the number 3 seed, and the Bengals go to the playoffs. That's how close they are from going to the playoffs or being the division winner or putting themselves in a good situation. So I think the Bengals staff looked at that and said, we need to get these linebackers back to where we were in 2021 and 22. When we got to the Super Bowl, remember, it was Pratt and Logan Wilson who were considered probably Super Bowl MVPs from the Bengals. Remember, it was Bocce and Clayton on 4th down and Henry. Remember, it was Pratt against the Raiders in the playoff game. These are all outstanding linebacker plays in the teeth of the defense that never really allowed anybody to run on them like that. So I think that's very important to note, and I think Barrett Carter is a big part of that.
For sure. And so that brings us to our next pick of the draft. This was another kind of shocker for me. Not necessarily shocker, but we kind of talked about on the Cincinnati Roundtable day 2, them coming back, and on day 3 going and looking at another guard, right? And Jalen Rivers was that guy that they took, but Jalen Rivers has flexibility. He's a good backup, graded by some, with potential to develop into a starter. He has flexibility, so the 34-inch arms, he's able to play tackle in a pinch if you need it. He can play 2 spots. The way that I look at this guy is he's pretty much has the Cody Ford skill set that you're looking for, right? The ability to play multiple positions. He was a 3-year starter at Miami. He lined up at left tackle in an RPO-based version of the air raid. He also shifted inside to left guard on most of his 2024. He did miss some time due to injuries. However, he played some of his best ball at the Senior Bowl. He stays pacing in pass protection, but he's really aggressive in the run game. A lot of people feel like he dominates in the run game from that perspective. He's a large body athlete with long arms, play strength, and functional movements, executing his blocking assignment. They do say that he has some over aggressiveness tendencies, where I think if you're a Bengals fan, you actually like that, because we don't have many offensive linemen that are overly aggressive on this offensive line outside of some of the guys that we've had in Amarius Mims and in Orlando Brown Jr. But this is a guy that can really develop here. And I think, to me, right guard isn't over yet. I think Jalen Rivers has potential.
Hey, so I can't hear you. I don't know if they can. It's like we lost you for a second. I still don't hear anything. I don't know if I'm tripping or if it's my computer. I just didn't hear you. If anybody, make sure people can hear me, I guess, or something. Can people hear me?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
All right, I switched mics. I hope it doesn't sound like I'm super far away. But I think Jalen Rivers is a guy, after being a 3-year starter at Miami, he can potentially challenge for the right guard spot. I think with the Bengals, why not? I think the fact that he has potential to play multiple spots, and I think the fact that you're talking about Lucas Patrick and Cordell Volson, who might not even be on a roster, like Cody Ford, like this is a guy, if he gets in here, learns the playbook, is able to do his thing, looks good in the preseason, I wouldn't be shocked if he can get in there and really compete at the right guard position because of how weak it is. If we were talking about any other position on this offensive line, like even center, he has no shot to start. But right guard, I'm throwing him in there. I think that he has the ability to really potentially fight for that spot. And that worst case scenario, he's either your backup at multiple positions in the pinch that you have an injury, which I think is actually going to give you more than Cody Ford does because he is younger. You don't know what he's going to be yet. And most people grade him as a guy that can develop into a starter. So I think Jalen Rivers is actually one of my favorite picks of this draft, just because he has that flexibility, and it shows that the Bengals know that they had an issue on this offensive line, and it was at the guard position. And so them double dipping on guard makes me feel a lot more comfortable because one of these guys has to work out at the position. Zen, what are your thoughts on Jalen Rivers?
Jalen Rivers is the most important pick in the whole entire draft next to Shamar Stewart. And the reason why is because of what they could have did in the second round. And it, like, the one thing this is why the Bengals draft doesn't get a B or A for me, is that they had a prime opportunity, like you just said, potential. They had a prime opportunity to end this offensive line conversation once and for good. Like, we could have been done. Like, bro, Ratledge is on the board, second round. You could come back with Fairchild. We would be done. We have no more conversations about the offensive line. We know our right guard, our left guard. Instead, here we are saying potential. And that's good. But who is the starting right guard for Joe Burrow? Who is protecting Joe Burrow to make sure Joe Burrow is 100% good? I don't like that. I don't like variability. And that's the part that pisses me off about that pick. That pick has to hit. That pick has to be the one. It's a lot like when I was going, Jamar Chase that's got to be the pick. But what people didn't know is that I told everyone that it was equally as important for the second round pick to hit just as well, or my plan doesn't work. You might as well draft Penei Sewell. And the reason why I think the Bengals have been set back for a little bit is because of that mistake that they made with Jackson Carman right there at that spot. When they had an opportunity in the second round to go get one of the best guards in the NFL, go get whoever you like. I mean, there were a lot of guys. There were Cosmes of the world who are playing really good for the Commanders right now. There's so many people that were right there. You had Landon Dickersons of the world around that same area and all these things. I'm not trying to go back to that draft. But the problem to me is if Carter does not start at right guard, which I don't know if he would do off the break, it puts so much pressure on the Bengals to go and get Sheriff or Reisner, and I don't think that they'll do that. And what they're going to do is come back and say, oh, Cody Ford is looking so amazing at camp. Oh, did you know Lucas Patrick was so amazing? And then they're going to give you 1,000 articles on how Lucas Patrick is the amazing family man, and I don't even know his situation. You're going to get so much Lucas Patrick smoothies shoved in a cup down your throat every Sunday, it's going to piss me off. And the problem is they've done that for 5 years, Ace. Like, why do they think that is like normal? Everybody else is looking at us like, bro, these people are crazy. They go wide receiver all the time, which I'm part of that, right? And they never really invest heavy into the trenches. And it's not that I don't like the kid. I think the kid is cool. But it's hard. It's a hard sell for me, bro. That's the only thing for me. I love the versatility, but I need a starting non-variable to say this guy is my starting right guard. If they don't give me Brandon Sheriff or Risner, which I don't think that they will, it's just that's the tough one for me. That takes the draft without giving a hint of whatever. That takes my draft from a B to a C. Just off that.
No, I agree, man. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. There's a lot of guys that have potential, but not necessarily sure things. And I think that you've seen that a lot with the Bengals in terms of their draft philosophy, and the things that have worked for them have been the sure things, have been kind of the Logan Wilsons, the Jamar Chases, the Joe Burrows, the T. Higgins, the big names that you kind of know, or guys that had buzz at the combine or through the draft that most people kind of know. You know, a lot of these people, and I think mine gave us this nugget. You talk about all of these consistents, draft experts and all of that. There is one player in the top 100 on some of these people's lists that the Bengals got in this draft, and it's Shamar Stewart. and it's Shamar Stewart. So that means that some of these guys, this doesn't mean that those guys won't project and be good. However, you're putting a lot of pressure on your coaching staff and your developmental staff to get a lot out of these guys in a very short window, which is supposed to be your Super Bowl. Now, with that being said, this is the pick. This next pick was the one probably maybe my favorite of the draft, and that's Taj Brooks, the running back out of Texas Tech. He's extremely athletic, 8.82 on the RAS score. You talk about 75 overall. That was good enough for seventh amongst running backs for next gen stats. He was a 4-year starter at Texas Tech, had back-to-back 1,500-yard seasons. Really did his thing. 22 straight games of 95 yards rushing or more. This one made me happy because I'm going to be honest, guys. When I saw the Zach Moss restructured contract, whatever that was, that made me think the Bengals aren't going to take a running back in this draft. And like once they took a running back, I was glad because with Taj Brooks, you're really getting that 1-2 punch combo with him and Chase Brown, a young guy that can give you some development. Broke, I believe, nearly 100 tackles one season. This is a guy that I'm going to be honest. Now, some people say Rudy Johnson. I don't know if it's the 28, but when I watched the tape, it really reminded me of when Mixon got out in space and was just running away from people. It really reminded me of that. I wouldn't say that he's a Joe Mixon clone because I don't think he has the same ability in the passing game. He's not bad in the passing game. He can pass protect. But I think Joe Mixon as a runner, but as a guy that can make people miss tackles even better, is I think what we get from this guy. You're getting a bruiser. He's only 5'9", right? But he can get up to 230 at some points. He came into the combine at 214, but I think that he's going to be play at 220. And for me, I see this guy as being someone that can really come in and take RB2 by surprise. I think by mid-season, I think Taj Brooks is your thunder to the lightning that Chase Brown is going to be for this team. What about you, bro?
It might happen faster than that. Don't let P. Ryan get like a little, I'm sore on my right knee. Like, he can't do that. P. Ryan is fighting for his life with little guarantees and everything like that. Bro could come out. I'm going to tell you one thing about him. My favorite pass protector in the whole draft, it was shout out to this dude. I cannot find him, but he actually cut up a whole bunch of pass pro, so I was able to skip a whole lot of games. Henderson from Ohio State was the best by far to me, but Taj Brooks was up there in my top 3. He is one of the most violent pass protectors I've ever seen from a running back position. When you go watch his reps, he's knocking dudes' heads off. My only gripe about it is sometimes you got to get up in the, underneath those shoulder pads and latch on a little bit to hold the block. So, like, when you're playing these bigger guys, like in the NFL, you can hit somebody like that and they might go, oh, and then just get up off of it. You know what I'm saying? You hit Shamar Stewart like that, like he's going to keep on probably running, but he is a violent pass protector. So I do really, really, really love this pick. But that kind of goes hand in hand with my point. Taking a running back in the 5th round isn't considered a luxury, but think about the emphasis that, like, the Bengals didn't even allow. Like, we're so good at picking skill positions. They didn't even allow, like some teams would have said, well, we got Moss and P. Ryan. We could just take a UDFA, whatever, right? Emphasis on we need to get better at running back, but I just wish that they would have that same tenacity when it comes to the trenches. And I think athletically they are, but think about how many people in the comment section or people listening to this on the podcast right now. Everybody's saying that's my favorite pick. And it's a running back. It's not an offensive lineman. It's, you know what I'm saying? And that to me is a bit of like what I'm saying is like, I think that we all will walk away from this draft, and who knows? Nobody knows. We're all prospecting. But I think we will walk away from this draft, at least I would, feeling like, man, we killed it. If we came out of there with 2 starting guards and put the emphasis on the trenches in that regard, or put the emphasis on D tackle. They didn't even take one. You know what I'm saying? But they took one in the 5th, and then guys like Arenas Peebles that go to the Ravens is like one of the best 3. You know what I'm saying? So it's like you're watching these guys and these teams just clean it up every single time. And I love this pick, and I think he's very much needed. But he's only needed to me if you take care of business. And what's the Bengals' biggest weakness? It's the trenches. And that's my only gripe with it. Bro led the NCAA in missed tackles. He went the whole entire season, this past 2024 season, 100 yards in every single game. In fact, he only had one game where he didn't have a touchdown. And when I say 100-yard games, this dude had 120 on average. He had a game against UC. Shout out to UC. He gave y'all 170, almost 200 yards. He makes people miss in small areas, and he makes nothing out of something. Like he takes something and he makes it pop on the football field. It'd be like 1-2 yard carries. He's getting 3 or 4. He's shifty. He's a great change of pace for Chase Brown. I do love the pick, but I'm telling you, that shouldn't be my favorite pick. But it is one of my favorite picks. But you know what I mean? What's up? The Bengals are crazy, bro. We're crazy.
I agree with you, man. Overall, looking at this draft, it was not an exciting draft for me. The Bengals took so many swings here that they put all of the onus on the coaching staff and of their development system to really get these picks right. And me personally, I don't have as strong of faith in that development system because I just haven't seen it work with different coaching staffs. I know it's a new coaching staff. I really haven't seen players get developed the way that they were when Mike Zimmer was here. I just haven't seen it from that perspective. And I think it's tough to expect a guy to come in as his first season as defensive coordinator and also attach to him, hey, we need you to help develop some of the guys that have already been here. I got a Miles Murphy I need you to develop. I got a Chris Jenkins I need you to develop. I need a Geno Stone that I need you to improve because he's our guy now that we didn't take a safety. Hey, guess what? I also need you to help with Jordan Battle. You know what? I also need you to help with CTB. I need him to bounce back to 2022 CTB, 2023 CTB that he was before. Hey, guess what? I also need DJ Turner to become a better man corner. And then, of course, on top of that, I need you to do some work with a 3-techs with the ones that we have. We're not going to give you any other ones in the draft. You're going to have to make something out of these ones. And guess what? Hey, you also got to get Shamar Turner to develop into being, a top prospect so we can get this fan heat off of us. Those are things that I've heard the Bengals do in the past where they've said similar things to Cedric Ogbuehi. Marvin Lewis had to reach out to Willie Anderson to try to get him to come in and help because the current structure that they had was not getting the value out of a Jake Fisher and out of a Cedric Ogbuehi that they had. And I just worry about that concern happening with the onus being placed. Hey, instead of us drafting better, instead of us scouting better, and instead of us being more aggressive in the draft and going up and getting some of the guys that have higher ceilings, we're going to play 4D chess and we're going to give you these guys. And it's up to you to develop these guys, even though you're installing a brand new offense, even though you're trying to get people comfortable and up to speed with their spots, even though you're trying to install a whole new defense. I just think that is doing a lot. And by the way, I need you to win a Super Bowl too at the same time. I'm not saying that it won't work. I hope it does work because if they start to develop some of these draft classes and they develop a Miles Murphy into a good edge rusher, if they develop Stewart into a good edge rusher, I think it's fine. I just think that that's a lot of development to do with brand new coaches, brand new everything all at one time. So for me, bro, I'm not rubbing off of, I think I'm going to stand on what I've been saying. I think it's a C draft. I really do. And that doesn't mean that it'll be bad. As it stands right now, there's too many variables for me in this situation for things to go either right or wrong. Now, I would love for them to get, like you mentioned earlier with us talking offline, if they could get 3 solid starters, I think that makes this a success. It don't matter if these guys are top 100 anywhere. If they can get a solid guard that's an upgrade over Jackson Kirkland, Cordell Volson, these guys, they get an upgrade at linebacker. Like if that's being better in coverage than Jermaine Pratt or not missing tackles like Jermaine Pratt last year or some of these other guys, I think you're good. I just think to put all of that year one on somebody's plate is crazy. Like not only like that's only time and dedication and sometimes years that it takes to accomplish that. Whereas I think the Bengals don't have years right now. They have right now, and that's why I was such a proponent of if this is what it is, I don't mind doubling picks up to go and get some of these guys that are going to make an immediate impact. I don't know outside of maybe 3 guys in this class that will have an immediate impact. And it's not a sure thing. It's not. I think Demetrius Knight is the most sure thing because he's going to step in and play linebacker. And the other guy, I'm not sure on.
Yeah, Barrett doesn't have to play. You got to think. Oren Burks might come out there and kill it, and Barrett doesn't have to play. Fairchild, I think, also is going to have the same impact like what you're talking about. I think Fairchild is going to be pretty much given the job, like, honestly, like at left guard. Like, they don't really have any other options. That's something else I don't like. Like, I don't like non-competition. I just don't like that. And handing him a job, if he were a second-round pick, I don't think we will be having, like, imagine him, and I don't want to harp on this. We talked about this before the draft. I mean, before the show tonight. I don't want to sit here and say this is what we should have did. You know, like I don't think that's really necessary. But I do think it's not just fan affair or whatever. It's actually going to go look at some of these guys and go look at what teams took these chances on them, right? Tate Ratledge, the Lions trade up to go get Tate Ratledge. We're talking about a team that in the last 2 seasons has had like one of the best records in football. Is argued that they have the best roster in football. They're going to put Tate Ratledge next to Penei Sewell. Think about this. We watch even in our first round pick, the Ravens take Malachi Stark. They don't really need a safety. They've already drafted Adolphus. I mean, they've already signed Adolphus Washington, and they already have Kyle Hamilton. No, we're going to take the best available player, and we're going to put him next to, and that's what all these good teams. So when we're sitting there saying, "Oh yeah, bro," like now I agree. Like the character concerns, sexual assault is nothing to play around with. Like I fully understand that. But some of the other stuff, or some of the, I'm not even gonna call it coping, but some of the stuff from other players or other teams or whatever that pop up, they use that and say, "Oh, that's why we didn't draft it." But then you're watching the Eagles, the Chiefs, the top teams go take those same players. And I think that your radar should be popping off and saying, "Damn, like, well, why is that?" And we watch it happen like that every single year. And that would be my biggest gripe. And I think the same way we were able to really address linebacker, I just don't think that the Bengals did enough up front, just like last year. When the defensive lineman got hurt, the Bengals front office left us hanging. They didn't go trade for no Calais. They didn't get nothing. They said, "Yeah, y'all got 4 or 5 injuries." Remember, Miles Murphy and all them got hurt before the season even started. We ran out there week 1 with Zach Carter to Fele and them, like playing big snaps. And then when we finally got Chris Jenkins back with the broken thumb and all, like super banged up, they didn't do anything to like say, "Sheldon Rankins, we got your backup on the roster," or anything like that. So when he goes down, and they didn't go do that, it really reminds me a lot of last year. And that's the part that also is kind of like a scary moment for me too, because I'm like, bro, you think Chris, like, we know that we don't have interior pressure. These dudes could get coached up all we want. I would have loved for them to have a specialist, you know, whether it was Harmon or whatever. I don't care who they're. I would have loved for them to have like a specialist. But that does bring me to my next part. I did think the one thing that they did do that was amazing was the guys that they brought in from the UDFAs that they brought in. We could briefly touch on this because I know the show's kind of going along. But there are some guys like Gregory that they brought in is one of my favorite 3-tech guys that have an ability. I think he has the ability to get a couple sacks in the NFL, like 4 or 5 sacks year one. Now, will he be able to make the roster? I don't know, but he's one of the most coveted UDFAs out there. You also had Seth McLaughlin, or McLaurin, or whatever bro's name is, from Ohio State, Remington Award winner. He didn't finish out the season. He missed those last games, and you could tell the Ohio State Buckeyes, they looked bad when they were going up against Michigan. There were different things that I saw, like when they didn't have him, a guy had to cut up for that one too. So shout out to him. Howard Cross is another guy that made the roster. So then you see what I'm saying? So the trenches, I thought that was crazy that they put the emphasis on the UDFAs. I wish they would have took that same energy to the actual draft. But I love the UDFAs. Even the kid Moore from Duke, I think he's dope. I don't know what his chances are looking like on the roster because the wide receivers that we do have, as long as Burton is on point or whatever, it's going to be tough. I thought their UDFA class has a real chance of making this roster. And I think the agents for those guys told them, hey, go to the Bengals. You got a realistic shot of making this roster. And guys like Perry, if somebody were to go down, pencil them in. I'm telling you right now, I think that those dudes can actually contribute. And I think day one, they're better than some of the options that we had last year.
Yeah, I think what they did in the UDFA, I think they cleaned up, bro. I mean, you talk about Seth, him being a guy that was the best available, as you kind of pointed out, on a lot of people's lists during the draft. This is a guy that in a year where they don't have a 7th-round pick, there's several guys that you could say fit the bill of 7th-round picks, right? You talk about Howard Cross as well. Some people were just posting, talking about how Dane Brugler and some of the experts were talking about his film just 2 years ago. And I think that you find some guys that really have a really good chance of making this roster. I truly do. I think with Seth, the injury, I'm not sure if he returns this season, but you at least have him. You can stash that. That gives you depth behind Matt Lee. That gives you depth behind Ted Karras, who I believe Ted Karras may be in the last year of his contract coming up here. So that gives you possibly a center of the future to look at. So I really love what they've done with this undrafted class. And obviously things haven't finalized, but if this is what it's looking like it's going to be, I think the Bengals really came out with highway robbery here. And I think it's pretty clear that was one of the things that they had high on their list because obviously they were recruiting this guy before this stuff started. And who doesn't want to play with Joe Burrow? Now, with that being said, we are going to pass it over to our sponsor over at Midwest Best Barbecue.
Now they call T. Higgins, or you say number 5s. Either way, you'll be winning. It's them hot honey lemon peppers. Now they call T. Higgins, or you say number 5s. Either way, you'll be winning. They was them hot honey lemon peppers. Now they call T. Higgins, or you say number 5s. Either way, you'll be winning. And much love to Mama T, Uno and CTB. MB's got Bengals wings, and now we just added T's. 9 to 5 winning things. Gritty for Uno wings. We say yes, Sirski now. Like Aces and be saying that T got them new wings. Only at MB's. Hot honey lemon peppers. Now you can call them T's. Hot honey lemon peppers. Now they call T. Higgins. Or you say number 5s. Either way, you'll be winning. It's them hot honey lemon peppers. Now they call T. Higgins. Or you say number 5.
That was nice. I ain't gonna lie.
Shout out to Midwest Best Barbecue, 669 Justice Court in Loveland, Ohio. Shout out to Tim and Nicole. Hope you guys were in the house at Midwest Best Barbecue. Got your wings there for draft night. If you didn't, make sure that you stop in there, man. I was just reminiscing on the tri-tip sandwich that they used to have. They're always trying new different things. So sometimes when you go there, they have different little pop-up specials that they do on the weekends. So make sure that you're always tapping in with Midwest Best Barbecue. They got all kinds of barbecue there. It's starting to warm up outside. So if you guys want ice cream, don't forget they also had a creamery on site as well. And yeah, make sure you stop by Midwest Best Barbecue. Don't forget they were voted the best wings in Cincinnati. So they got the wings, they got the barbecue. I don't think that there's anything there that does not taste good at Midwest Best Barbecue. Zim, before we get out of here, was there anything that you wanted to say?
No, I wanted to ask you. Give me your grade on the draft.
Yeah, it's a C. I gave it earlier. My grade is a C. What's your grade on the draft?
I'm gonna go C. I want to go C plus. This draft scares me a little bit, man. It really does. Like, and it's crazy. I don't think it's even risky. You know what I mean? The only risky proposition to me is like not taking the guard in a second. I feel like, Knight will be fine. Stewart, you know what I mean? Like, but I'm at a C too. I was watching a study the other day, and it said if you can get 3 really good, starters out of a draft, that's an elite draft. Contrary to what people believe is like throughout time, like it's hard to get more than 2 starters in a draft. You can get 3, like, what I'm saying, you're cooking for real. So we'll see how it goes, though. I do think what they've done at the linebacker position is drastically going to improve the defense on that regard. You talked about the cornerbacks before the draft. They didn't do anything there. So, like, we're in the same spot, and they're relying a lot on the coaches. It's a lot that wasn't done, so we'll see how it goes. I don't think the draft is bad. It's just a lot of potential, bro. It's a lot of potential.
I got one last question for you, bro. 100 men versus 1 gorilla. Who's winning?
I feel like I wish I had the button in the show. I feel like that the 100 men is like all the Luka fanboys trying to take out one Anthony Edwards. It's Wolves in 5 on Wednesday.